Good morning, everybody. We're back. Everybody okay after that hurricane? Everybody good? Good, good. Well, we are back in the new Impact Hub Houston space in the Neil Esperson building. So hopefully if you're out there online, you'll come by and join us and check us out in person sometime. But I am here today with a group of an amazing people and one of my favorite people to stalk online. We've actually been friends for years in real life.
Yeah, I say we're friends a whole kid ago.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Kelsey Ruger, and he's at Hello Alice, and your title is Chief Technology Officer?
Chief Product and Technology Officer.
So he's a fancy pants. But today he has been doing some amazing stuff in the AI space related to small and mid-sized businesses. So we're going to pick his brain today and learn all about how to really focus on efficiency and productivity in the AI space. So I'm going to start with my first question. So, because of the sheer amount of entrepreneurs and solopreneurs you're working with, like, what's the biggest challenge that you see them facing when it comes to productivity?
So I take this a couple of different ways. The term I use when I talk about small teams or entrepreneurs is I call it resource poverty, right? Like they don't have enough something, funding, access to people, employees. And so a lot of times what they're dealing with is, how do I get this produced without the things that I think I need, or how do I do it faster, smarter, because it's really competitive now, right? Like there's more people in this space. Some of the barriers to competition are lower. And so you have to really think through, how do I do this in enough time to be profitable and be productive as well?
Yeah, no, that's true. I feel like lots of when you think about trying to get all of the work done that you need to get done in order to be competitive, it can be daunting, especially if you know that you don't have enough human resources to get it all done. So I'm assuming that means that you believe that entrepreneurs and small teams need an AI strategy.
I think
Why do they need that?
So even beyond AI, I think you need a strategy for consuming new tools as they are developed, because so much changes in the marketplace. And if you get stuck, I'll give you a perfect example. How many of you all remember when Figma first came out and Figma was really popular? Right before that, it was Sketch, right? Everybody was on the Sketch train. What happened to Sketch, right? Like it got passed by Figma. And so these things happen so fast, and AI just happens to be the latest tool in your tool belt that I think it's really important for you to understand. We talk a lot about generative AI, but there's lots of AI based tools that will help make you more productive, either by speeding up your work or allowing you to do more work in the same time period.
So before, when we were talking about this a little bit, you were talking about goal time versus tool time.
So goal time versus tool time is actually something I used to talk mostly with our UX team, because when you are designing interfaces, you want to make sure that you're designing an interface that moves the user closer to their goal and not having to configure tools. And I always tell people the best technologies are ones that are transparent. You don't know that they're there. And in this case, the goal time is you spending time on the thing that matters. So if you're producing a presentation, it's outlining the presentation and perfecting the message versus configuring the font or deciding what color the templates need to be. That's tool time. And I think a lot of times we get stuck on, I'm good at Photoshop, or I'm good at using Figma, or I'm good in
It's easy to do that though, because it gives you some leverage in your career. And so if you become the expert in that tool, you're a big deal. But then what happens when the tool goes away?
Maybe, right? Like you could be an expert in MailChimp, right?
Yeah.
But if your company adopts Salesforce Marketing Cloud, then what?
Yeah.
Right? You have to know how to build a journey, not how to use MailChimp.
Amen. Sort of, yeah. It's just the platform versus agreed. So I know that you talk about AI through 3 lenses of AI application. Can you walk us through kind of how you think about that?
Sure. So when I talk about AI, I talk about automation, augmentation, and autonomy. And so when you think about the first A of automation, it's what are the things can you completely delegate to a machine? These are things that either humans will make a lot of errors at, or a machine is just going to do it faster, so that you can focus on things that the machine doesn't do well. Augmentation is probably the thing that we are experiencing most right now, especially with generative AI. And it's how can the machine make you better or make you more productive at what you do? So it's using technology to improve what you're outputting or to help you do it faster. And autonomy isn't really about AI. It's what are those things that we as humans are just better at still. And so we'll talk about this a little bit. Generative AI, it can't think, right? Like it looks like it's thinking, but it's not really thinking. And so there are cases where emotional intelligence or creative intelligence is still done better by humans, and just being able to separate those things out so you know which bucket your work falls into.
Well, I think this is a good time to dig into like how it actually works.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
How does
So
how
you
does this
use generative
thing,
AI?
how does generative AI actually work? Like what is it actually doing behind the scenes?
So one of the reasons I like to break this down, and I'm going to use Chat GPT because it has all of the pieces in the name that you need to understand. And until you truly understand what the generative AI model is doing, it's really hard to write great prompts to get the best output from it. And so if you think about the chat and then the GPT, the chat is the interface that you're working through. And without getting too far into how different types of AI work, most machine models that you're going to work with are what I call one shot. So you give it data, you ask it one question, you're going to get a response back. The reason we talk about chat is it has memory and it can respond based on things that you said. So when you're giving the Chat GPT interface a prompt, it's taking what you said, but it also has recollection of what you said in the past. Then there's the generative part. That's the generation of text or images or other things that you want to see. And then the P is pre-trained. So in a traditional machine model, you're giving it the data, you're cleaning it, you're teaching it what it wants to do. And in this case, it's been trained with lots and lots of data, and it has been taught to recognize patterns. And that's really what you're getting back. And then there's the part that's called transformer. And transformer really is a model that was first published around 2017. And the transformer is what it allows the model to do is recognize large amounts of text in context. So where we process a word at a time and then we construct a sentence, it's actually looking at the whole context. So it can figure out what am I supposed to respond with. And so this is where I say it's not really thinking and responding. It's actually doing math and giving you an approximate response. And so when you understand that, that's what some of the things that Jennifer and I'll talk about how you prompt to make sure you don't get things. You're still going to get hallucinations and probably weird answers, but the better you get at understanding how it's working, the better your prompts can be, for especially when it comes to productivity and things like writing, for sure.
So you bring up writing, and so I was talking to Kelsey about the fact that a lot of times writers and creatives feel feelings about using AI. So doesn't AI was that a good way to say it? Doesn't AI kill your productivity, or doesn't it? I'm sorry, doesn't AI kill your creativity? Doesn't it kill your innovation?
Here's a thing that I tell people that I don't think a lot of people talk about. I almost never start from scratch with AI.
There you go.
Never, ever, ever. Like if I'm asking it to help me write something, I've got an outline or I've written 2 or 3 paragraphs. So it's not generating fresh ideas from scratch for me. It's taking what I've already thought through and helping me expand it. And so like one of the things that I'll do is I'll give it a full outline and it'll evaluate my outline. And in that case, what I wanted to do is say, have I thought through this idea in a way that's going to make sense to people? And it will call out problems. And it's not writing it for me. It's sort of saying, I'm your editor, make these changes. And so I think from a creativity standpoint, I never tell people let the AI write everything for you because you're not going to get something, one, that sounds like you. Two, it could come up with something odd that you wouldn't agree with.
Yeah.
The other thing I would tell you is don't ask the AI to help you write something that you don't already know. So like if you're an expert in marketing, don't ask it to write a blog post for you about quantum mechanics, right? Because you don't even have the background to know if what the machine produced is accurate. And so being able to sort of put these guardrails up around what you ask it is sort of the first part, the first important piece.
Yeah. Okay. So it's safe if we put guardrails around it. If I am a entrepreneur and I am on day one of trying to, is it still working? Okay. What are some of the top 2, 3, 4 things I should be using these AI tools for?
So you might not guess this, I'm a very analog person. I take analog notes. I keep basically a note catalog at home called the Commonplace Book. I don't know if any of you have heard that. It's notes from probably the last 25 years of presentations and things. And so the first thing I say, start analog, make sure you know what you're doing in a day. That's the first thing. If you can catalog what you're spending your time on, it's easier for you to pick out the things that you want to automate or that you think you can use the AI for. So the first tool is get your productivity sort of mapped out. The second thing I would say is figure out which tools that you're already using have an AI component to them. So if you are a Google Workspace customer, they already have integrated Gemini into some of their tools already. So you can write emails and it will check your email for you and make sure you're actually writing with the tone that you want to. So if it's a business email, it'll help you make it less casual when it needs to be. If it's casual email, you can take out some of the business jargon.
All right. What else should I be doing?
So Jennifer and I have talked about this a lot. I think I don't have a favorite. Actually, I do have a favorite. I don't think there is a one perfect generative tool. I actually have paid accounts for ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude, and I use them all for different reasons at different points. And so I think understanding the difference between the tools is the first thing, and then picking your sort of main one. My main one right now that I use the most is Claude. Mostly because it creates what's called an artifact that looks more like a document that we would edit. Once I've done that, then I would say go down based on what you're doing on a regular basis and figure out what the tools are. So for me, since a lot of my day is spent presenting or talking to people, my second tool is probably Midjourney, because I use Midjourney to create images that communicate a message that I'm trying to send to people, and I use that. And now that some of the other generative tools allow you to generate images, I use them a lot more for generating diagrams or things to help people understand things. So I think the figuring out which tool fits best for what you're doing is sort of the second step.
Yeah. So I think this rolls right into. So when we were talking, Kelsey gave some examples of how his team is using generative AI tools like Claude and GPT. Immediately stole his idea. But I would love for you to kind of describe. So it's this concept of how you prompt and how you store your prompts. I'd love for you to share with the audience kind of what that looks like, why you've built it that way, and then I think it's a really innovative way to get productivity out of these GPT tools.
Sure. So and I will have to figure out how to share my list of like things you want to avoid with the prompt, because that's how I came up with this. I have an acronym that I use now called ACTOR, and it means add context, task, outcome, and example. Context, role, outcome, task. I just set it out of order, but those are the things that you want to do. So the context is making sure you provide the data that supports the prompt. So for example, if I'm going to say, write a prompt or write a description for a role, I'm going to give it the role title and some specifics about the role that I want it to consider as it's going. The task is how I want that task to be done. Write it in this way, use this voice. And I'll kind of, before we leave, I'll walk you guys through how I came up with a formula for us to develop a brand voice that we all use the same way when we're going to ask it to write something so it sounds the same. So that's the context. The role, if I'm asking it to write a job description, I define act as an HR director with this background and you're going to do these things. The reason I do that is you think about this large language model. What I'm trying to do is narrow down what it has to consider or what it has to look at in order to complete this task. And all throughout my prompts, I will give examples. So if I wanted to use a specific template to produce the output, I'll tell it how that template works. If I wanted to understand the difference between two types of outputs, I'll show it the two types of outputs. And that's actually part of the transformer because it's really good at understanding those patterns and being able to compare and contrast. So the more examples you give it, the more patterns it's able to see and to sort of use that as it's producing its outcome. Something that I told Jennifer this morning that is a part of this now is I also ask it to give me alternatives. So if I ask it to give me a role, I ask it to give me an alternative to how you might have written that if you gave another example. And that's to force it to sort of self-check itself before it gives me a final answer. And so eventually, hopefully I can share with you all an example of this. We use them all the time in the playbooks we use for our company. So for example, we have one prompt that will, when we start an event, it will look at the description of what we're trying to do, and it'll produce the description for the event, an internal brief, a brief we send to our partners. It'll give a schedule because we've sort of outlined what we want to do. And I was actually shocked the first time it produced that schedule and it was right the way I would do it. It just showed me how much the tools are evolving. And that process saved us probably 2.5 to 4 hours because you got to think about writing a description, then you got to write a brief. It's always the same, right? Like things that you do the same way all the time. All you have to do is teach it and then give it the parameters or the guardrails about what to produce.
And it worked so perfectly. So we run these paid media campaigns pretty consistently, but they have multiple elements to them. They may have an email element to them. They have a workflow element to them. They have a creative element to them. We have to pass them off to our the person who manages our paid media efforts. We have to pass them off across the team. And so I wrote one just like you showed me, and I probably spent a good hour to 2 hours writing these briefs and getting everything organized. I wrote this prompt. It took me maybe an hour to write the prompt, but we've run this campaign probably 3 times since I implemented this new way of doing it. So I've already saved myself 6 hours, and I know I'm going to do this 10 more times this year. So it really is a cool way to think about prompting.
Yeah, and the one thing I will tell you about my way of writing prompts, it's longer. I can tell you that right now. The prompts are definitely longer, but the good thing about it is the tools have extended what they call a context window. So you can actually send it more data and it can consume more back and forth conversation. So a longer prompt will work in many cases. In some tools like Midjourney, it doesn't always help to have a longer prompt. So you just have to know how the tool works.
Yeah, and I think playing with it really helps. So you made the recommendation of trying the same prompt in multiple large language models. And so I did that, and then I can now understand which tools do a better job of outputting which kinds of tasks. So I had to play with it a little bit, but it's going to save me so much time in the long run. It's worth it.
The other thing that Jennifer and I talked about is what I call framing questions. So a lot of times for example, if I want Claude to summarize a book for me or to answer questions about a book, the first question I ask is, do you know what this book is?
Mm.
And if it comes back with the right answer, then I know that information is in there. And by asking that question, I've already narrowed down the scope of what it's going to look at when I ask it the next question, because that's essentially what it's doing.
Yep. And that worked really well because I started asking, well, do you know what this tool is? And then asked how to do something, and I was able to complete it. Specifically, the next question I'm going to ask you is about, I know that you're doing some really cool things with Zapier. And so I asked the question around Zapier so that I can understand how to create a Zap that would do a task for me, because I was like, okay, we need to do more of this, and it's going to help our automation processes. So I'd love to hear, I'd love for you to share with this group here, what are some of the things that you're doing with Zapier specifically to kind of tie together your automated tasks to make processes more efficient?
So the first thing I will say about Zapier is understanding the tools that it connects to. So once you understand the different tools you can use, you can do, so there's one, I don't know if you all have heard of this company called Banner Bear. So Banner Bear actually has a utility that lets you auto produce social media posts. So you give it a template, and then you can pipe data in from a spreadsheet or somewhere else. And so one of the things that I've helped a friend do is they set up all of their data for certain types of posts using Airtable. That data is being pulled in from a form. And so they have different team members that can submit forms, and it goes into this Airtable that's connected to Zapier to format the data using either a script, and then it saves it back to Airtable. And then that table can be used with the Banner Bear to produce, hundreds of images at a time, because the tools are all tied together. And so my recommendation with that is, you got to have a data source, right? Like when you're going in to do a Zap, where's the data being pulled from? What is the task that's being done? And then what do you want the output to be? That one, by the way, Jennifer and I were talking about this earlier. If you do social media, the name of the game right now is volume, right? Like you can't, if you're trying to get reach, you're not going to be able to post once a week and get any result, right? Like you've got to post more than that. You got to be able to do videos. And so there's also tools now that will take long form videos and chop them up into reels or shorts that you can then upload those to. So again, it's knowing how the tools work first, and then being able to apply it to a process that you need to automate.
Yeah. And would you agree, like you have to really play with these tools and dig into them in order to get there?
Yep.
So are there any other tools you're using? Is there anything that you're excited about, that's coming up? Have you been playing with these tools?
There's a new competitor to Midjourney. It's called Flux.
Okay.
It's actually pretty good. I haven't played around with it a lot, but I think for me, the next stage of this is images and video. And there's lots of tools that are emerging for that. The one that I probably have been most impressed with recently with the updates they made is a company called 11 Labs, and they do voiceover and voice. So text to voice or text to speech. They can also replicate voices pretty well. If you train them, they can recreate voices. And so we've been thinking for a lot of the things internally where we're like, we should just record this on video instead of teaching it live every time. We've been thinking about taking some of the things that we would write and converting them into spoken podcasts or things like that. So the tools like that, I think, are going to be very useful going forward, especially if you are producing content and you want to produce content for all the different ways people learn. Some people are visual, some people are auditory. And so if you can produce a blog post that also has video and audio with it, you actually can touch more people that way.
So we've talked a lot about tools, but when you're in a small team or an entrepreneur, you may not have funding to pay for every iteration of all these tools. How should you consider what you prioritize? And what
Okay.
would you prioritize
So
if you had a limited budget?
So I don't know if you all know what we do at Hello Alice. A lot of what we do at Hello Alice, we work with small businesses to help them find funding, resources, opportunity. And I spent a lot of my time working with small businesses and entrepreneurs to figure out how to build a healthier business. One of the first things that I think as an entrepreneur or a small business owner, you have to figure out is at what point does it actually cost you more to do it yourself? And most entrepreneurs, I think, struggle with this, especially if their business is their skill set. Like you are a designer. At some point, even if you're a great designer, as the owner of the business, it is a loss for you to be doing that work. And so for me, it's not about the budget for the tool. It's, is it better for me to spend my time designing this brochure than being out
pay
selling
for it somewhere else,
right? Like you're going to pay for it somewhere else. And so I think it's less about the tool and more about, as a business owner, when do you make that shift from being the doer to being the business owner? And that's what you really have to evaluate.
Yeah, no, that's true. Are there any other challenges that we should be thinking about from either the AI perspective or the productivity perspective?
From the productivity perspective, there's a couple of things I would say. Okay. Most of the time, I think we don't really understand what our teams are doing. And really understanding what our teams are doing is sort of the first step to productivity, because once you understand it, you can kind of see in there, like, where are we not being productive, or where is there churn and the process that's actually making things take longer? So really understanding what's going on in the company. And then don't just pick a tool because we told you up here to pick the tool. Actually pick it because it fits with what you need to do as a business versus it's trendy.
That's true. I'm going to ask the smart people in the back. I know that the people in this room have questions. Do you have questions? Yeah. How many minutes do I have? How much time do I have to? Okay, awesome. This is what I was trying to do, is like get to the black, because I knew people in here would have questions. Do you want to come take Mike around? Yeah.
Anybody got a question? Hi.
Hello.
I just wanted to hear more about how Levin works.
So 11 Labs, you upload text. Actually, while we're here, I'll pull up one that I sent to the team yesterday just to show them how part of this works. But you put in text and it will actually generate the audio that goes along with it. And so I'll.
Welcome to Hello Alice. We're thrilled to have you join our mission to empower small businesses across America. Let me give you a quick rundown of who we are and what we do.
So that was produced. Here's how I did this, because I wanted to test it. Oh, well, you can turn it off. I took our sort of product description, the description of our company, and what we're trying to communicate. I gave that to Claude and said, write a 32-minute-and-a-half script for a video. I gave that text to 11 Labs. It actually processed the text. It actually, because of the way I punctuated, if you can hear in there, there's inflections at certain points. So it recognizes punctuation. It will say, if I say said sadly, it'll figure that out. And so that's how I did it. And so 11 Labs, it's not just taking speech and synthesizing it from text. It's actually processing the text and figuring out how should this be read. And the voices are a lot more realistic than what we're used to. Almost it's scary to a point, how good they get. Yeah. We figured out the British accents, and actually probably people in Britain are like, that doesn't sound real. But to us, we're like, oh, that British one sounds better than the American one.
So can you give us some best practices on being mindful of the data that you're uploading into the language models? Are there any concerns around, not wanting to share exclusive data for your company or business?
we actually, so here's the thing. Here's what we did before we started letting it out into the wild. We do have a AI policy that tells people don't upload certain things, mostly because that's a part of our PCI and SOC processes within the company. My recommendation, don't upload anything you don't want anybody else to see. And so for us, a lot of times what we're uploading is all public information anyway, like here's what we're doing about the company. And here's what I would say. A lot of times the generative tools are not even the best tool for synthesizing data. Like it can upload a spreadsheet and it can build an interactive dashboard. That might not actually be the best tool for it. And so in those cases, I think once you know what your policy is, like don't upload certain proprietary data, then you just can work with the things that you can upload. But I definitely think if you have a team, you should write a policy about what you do and don't want being uploaded. And if you can have a team, don't just have people out randomly doing it, have a team account that they can use as well.
Yes, my question is, I create course descriptions and I don't want to plagiarize. So when I'm using AI, where is the content coming from?
So the content, so here's if you're telling it to write from scratch, there is a possibility it's going to pull things that it knows because it's approximating the answer. If you're writing a course description, I would not start from scratch. Like I have to write course descriptions too. I write what I think is the course description. And so my process would be, here's the topic I'm talking about. Here's the learning objectives that I want. Now, as an AI, I want you to use this psychology to write a description that is going to convince people to so it's taking my knowledge and applying what I know about marketing to get people to take action. That's actually what I'm using the tool for. I'm not saying write a course description for SEO and I don't give it anything, right? Like I give it something because I know the topic that I want to cover. And honestly, if I have the times that I've said, write this thing and I didn't give it anything, it came up with really bad descriptions that wouldn't be what I would teach anyway. So in your case, I would say, start with your knowledge to seed it and it'll help you make your description better.
Hey, Kelsey.
Hey.
Nice to meet you. Quick question. So, well, I work as a graphic designer, and lately in my previous job, I've been looking at ways to automate my process, especially with my nonprofit as well. And I like the ideas of what you were saying about developing verbal identities. For the most part, that's what we call them in my side of the space as well. I like the idea of Banner Bear and Airtable. How does Banner Bear work? Do you just create a template on their platform for it to automate the graphics, or do you use, let's say, tools like Illustrator or Canva to then upload a PDF for it to then reference and then, build all that stuff?
So you upload, it used to be you uploaded a template to their platform. I actually think they have a way for you to plug it directly into Figma now. I haven't done it in a little while, but I think you just upload the template and you define the spots where it's going to pull in the data and then produce the output. Is that all the questions? I thought you were going to ask me a question about graphic design. That's still an area where there's actually here's what I would say about graphic design. There's actually a really good tool. I think it's called UI Wizard that people are starting to say it produces really good wireframes. And so when I talk to designers about this, I say, what is it that you actually want to be doing as a designer? And it's all the stuff that today we don't get time to do, like research and putting the designs in front of real people. And so it's that tool time versus goal time thing I was talking about. You could spend all of your time building wireframes and UI mock-ups, or you could take those UI wireframes and put them in front of real people to produce better products. That's actually what we want. And so if there's a tool that helps us get to that end goal better, I'm all for it.
Yeah, like what you were saying earlier about cataloging what you do and then pinpointing what you spend the most of your time doing, whether it's just researching. A lot of that seems to be the best way of working as a designer. Another thing I was kind of curious about as well with Claude in particular, lately I've been getting into web design and building my portfolio site from scratch again. I'm using Framer, and a lot of the times I would go to my preferred AI chatbot, and I would just ask it questions about using the platform in fixing certain bugs and stuff. My main question was about Claude, Claude AI. Do you usually use it to write code as well? Because I know that that platform is also great for fixing bugs and stuff like that.
When Claude released this new artifact feature that they have, I spent like an hour or two just testing it to see if it could write the code the way it's not going to write it exactly the way I would have written it. But one of the things I did test it is I built a game where it would let me throw snowballs back and forth between me and another team. And I did that in like 30 minutes. But here's what I would say about writing code using any AI. If you don't already know how to write code and you can't pinpoint like what the potential problem is, again, I think you got to do the things, it speeds up what you're already good at. And so if you don't know how to write code, like I can look at the code and say, oh, you left out the CSS here. And it'll say, oh yeah, I sure did. Or this color is, you have to be able to read the code too in order to know whether the output is any good or not.
Hi, I have a question around website building. I heard you as like a small business owner. I'm pretty much all the departments, but we are working on that right now. But for building a business, I use a website. I use Squarespace. Is there something? What I'm finding out is that our website is not reaching as many people we felt like it can. Is there something that we can use that is AI to help us like maximize Squarespace for right now until we can, get like a website designer or something like that? Is there AI around that?
There probably is, but I would actually need to look at your site to give you a real answer, because I could give you go let it analyze what you're writing with Claude or Chat GPT, but the real answer is someone needs to look at your site and say, this call to action is ineffective, or this copy might not be communicating in the way that you expect. And so that's sort of the thing that I think you still need a person at this point, because there's no tool that's going to automatically do all of the things yet.
Hi. What are the most common mistakes you're seeing people do when they're trying to use AI or integrating AI into their daily productivity?
Kind of to build on what you were saying is, write me a blog post about SEO. That's a terrible prompt, right? There's no context. There's no instructions on what you want it to do. And I guarantee you a prompt like that is going to come back with something none of us would like, right? And then you're going to say, it's not good at writing. Well, no one's good at writing without instructions, not even us. If you told me write a blog post about SEO, I'd be like, okay, SEO is awesome. So I think unfocused prompting is one. Asking it for things that require overly factual responses. Like I still don't depend on generative AI to give me solid answers about anything that I require to be factual without checking it, because it will. ChatGPT used to do this all the time when it first came out, and you wouldn't have known because the answers sounded so convincing, and you're like, right. And so they've gotten better at understanding when not to answer certain things. And so I always either write the prompt in a way that will double check it, or I'll ask it to verify first before I put in the prompt. But I always double check everything. And if you don't double check everything, you can get yourself into trouble.
So to that point, to Sandra's point and that, two things. First, you mentioned earlier, like you wouldn't rely on the generative AI to do code if you don't know how to code. One thing I would say is what I've used is in the absence of a CRM, which I hope to change soon, I've been doing a lot of Excel and trying to run formulas on complex data. I'm not a finance person. And so, I was butting up against like, oh, how do I do this? Or I can't make that formula work. So if it can help somebody, even though I'm not good at the code, the Excel code, if you will, and the formulas, I was putting in what I had that wasn't working. And my favorite tool for that at the moment is Perplexity I use various things, and it was helping me fix the formula, even though I'm not an expert in that code, let's call it code and the formulas. And it helped me manage that much faster so I could get the,
See, but I would argue you know enough about Excel to know if it's on the right track. But if it was writing Python, you might be like, I don't know where to start, right?
For sure. So you have to have a modicum of basic information. And then to the point about what you were saying about information that you don't know, for example, I am, for example, using it to research CRMs and very specific CRMs to my sector. And what I did is I started the process, gave it like, one or two examples of what I was looking for to structure it. And I asked it to go find everything that it could. And then I paste that in and I put it in bold red. So then I go back and then double check all that information, but at least it's gotten me like a head start to, so for the research, I wouldn't rely basically on information that it's given me as being the gospel, but it's got me so much further in my research process. And then I can just quickly start verifying the information and adding to it. So yeah.
I'll give you all one to test when you get back home. So I mentioned earlier transformers, which is, if you dig into it, it's actually a very complex topic in the AI world to understand the architecture and what's happening. I'm actually going through a course at UT for AI for executives, and the level of math and statistics that you have to understand for this course is crazy. But what you could do with this transformers topic, if you just went and said, explain to me what a transformer is, what do you think the first answer you might get back is? Optimus Prime or something like that, right? But you have to say, in relation to generative AI, what is a transformer? And it'll give you an answer back. And I can guarantee you it's going to sound very technical. Then you say, explain this to me as if I'm explaining it to a kid or someone who doesn't understand this topic. That is sort of how, kind of building on how you learn with it, because you've already set the context. And it's going to give you a better answer that way.
Okay, so I have a real quick question. So I have been using, obviously, AI in almost every single thing that we do is all the way down the chain. But one of the things that it's more of a statement in a way, but one of the things that I was having trouble with the other day was actually getting the social media breakfast website to resolve as a site. I had to go in and change all the A records and the B, whatever. And I kind of know what I'm doing, but not really. And so I was having trouble. It wasn't working. So I actually took a picture of the way that I had the records set up. I uploaded it into ChatGPT and I said, what am I doing wrong here? This is what I'm trying to get it to do. Here's all the records. What do I need to change? And it said, you need to delete this record. You need to add this record and you'll be there. And I did. I deleted the record. I added the record and boom, I didn't have to call support. I didn't have to so first of all, can you imagine how people are using this to, if you can educate your customers to do this, can you imagine what you save in support costs? I'm just saying, I don't know if you're using it that way, but I'm using it in ways that I don't really know what I'm doing.
I use it to look at an image and describe certain things to me. And I ran so many tests on this Cami before I was like, okay, I believe it can do it. I would ask it to identify what's in the picture. I've done charts where it will know, for example, if I give it a bar and it could tell me what the median is, and it's right. And so I know it has the ability to, as long as the image is high enough resolution for it to actually process it. If you give it a low resolution image, it still won't work.
So I have one more question. It seems like we have a problem with verification, right? There are a lot of people who are raising this issue of how do you know when it's right, or at least in the right direction? Have you come across any tools to help with that, or other tools or hacks to help verify information?
So what I said is narrowing the scope by starting. Really, the best tool for verifying is people. So for example, if you, like one of the things we're doing is we're building AI tools. We realize that we have to have a mechanism as users are submitting prompts to verify the output that's coming back. And so there's tools that are built when you're integrating AI tools into your workflow as a product that will verify this as it's coming back. So I think there's tools to verify responses at a scaled method, but if you're using a chat interface, I think you need to verify it yourself. Huh? I don't know about Reddit, but I mean, you could go look on Reddit. It might be right, but yeah. I was like, if you're checking Reddit, you might as well check Wikipedia too.
Well, I didn't have a question.
So, Kelsey, thanks for being here. I have a really broad question, and that is, how do you get better at asking questions? Because I think what I've learned in my own work is that refining the questions that we're asking is really important, and I'm curious if you have ideas about how to get better at that.
I actually think just in general, as people, we need to get better at questions like that. Cammie and Jennifer have known me for a long, and Grace, that's how I communicate most of the time. If you come and say, I have a problem, I'll say, what do you want to do? Like, what do you want to get to? And I think just getting in the habit of asking like what I call fire starter questions, like to open the exploration space. And then there's questions that you use to sort of close down or narrow the space. I think just asking more questions, honestly, this gets into a much broader topic. I think in general, we're taught so much to always have an answer that we're not good at asking questions. We're so used to just providing an answer. We don't ask questions first, and just getting in the habit of asking is the.
And I think sometimes we think we're asking a question, but we're really just droning on.
Yeah. Or you ask a question in preparation to respond, not necessarily because you're truly curious about the answer. You just want to respond. So.
So one of the things that I know that you do, because I've seen you do it, is you ask the AI to help you refine the questions that you're asking. Do you want to share a little bit about how you do that and what that looks like?
So if I have a piece of content that I've written, and I'll give you a real world example. If I have written a welcome letter to a new employee and I've been thinking about all the things that I want them to do, I might say, hey, evaluate this text. Did I miss anything that a new employee might be interested in? Then it comes back and it'll say, you should evaluate this and you should evaluate that. I'll say, okay, expand on number 4. And I'll pick only that piece for it to expand on. Or how can I ask this better so that people actually understand the question? So I think it's mostly just picking out small pieces. Don't ask it to rewrite the whole thing. One of the things that I showed Jennifer is if I'm writing an article that has 10 sections in it, I would never do all 10 at once. I do it section by section. And then the reason I do that is because if there's a problem with section 2 and 3 depends on the conclusion of section 2, now you have a problem because you just produced a whole article that the very first part of it is wrong. And so I know what you're talking about. Now, I put in stops. So as I'm going through, I put in stops, and it basically says stop after this point and let me verify before you continue. And so it will stop running the prompt. Yep. Yep. And so if it's a prompt and there's like 6 steps, we didn't talk about the steps. I do it in steps. So if I know I want it to first come up with the title and the angle, I'll tell it to stop after that, and I'll look at the title. It gave me 5. I say I like 2 and 3. Can we merge those 2? It'll merge the 2, and then if I'm fine with it, it'll say, okay, here's my secrets. Here's my secrets to writing anything: title, angle, hook, and promise. Because from a marketing perspective, or from a just general engagement perspective, how can you write anything if you don't know what the promise of the article is for the user and how you're going to hook them into reading it? And so I always ask for those things first.
I knew that. Yes.
Promise.
Okay. How do you train it to sound like you?
Okay. This is actually much easier with Claude now that they have projects, because you can just upload a bunch of your writing and then give it instructions on. It was really difficult when it was just ChatGPT or Gemini, because you could only upload so much. So basically what I do is I upload a bunch of my writing, and some people have said that it's even better for you to record an interview of yourself so that it captures the way you actually talk, and then say, take this text and evaluate it for tone, style. If you want, I'll send you like the exact things I did. I ask it to try to identify a celebrity voice that sounds like this, so that you have another reference point. And then I say, develop bullets for how you would instruct someone else to write in this style. And so it will say warm tone, witty, anecdotes are used. And so it can tell from looking at your writing what you did, and it's going to sound more like you too. You got to upload enough though, and it's sort of a balance. It won't work on 1 or 2 posts. You got to like think 5, 6, 7.
Do you, as a tech person, know where we stand on things like watermarks for people that are very jittery about uploading their image, their voice, their tone out into Gen I, where there's so many deep fakes out there and people, bad actors? Is there a way now? I mean, are we getting closer to being able to watermark things that this is actually me or that's not me?
There are ways. Honestly, so here's my cynical answer. Do you have a Facebook account? But the reason I don't get concerned is my picture is so many different places. They're going to be able to pull it from somewhere. That my mom bugs me about this all the time. Like, your picture is everywhere. I was like, that happens when you speak a lot. And so I'm not overly concerned. For me personally, I know a lot of people are concerned. I'm more concerned with people taking my data about me personally and putting it in a database, and then it's insecure and it gets stolen, because there's probably much more damage that can be done if you know my email address and some of my passwords than if you have a photo of me.
On that note, how can you safely use all of this productivity hack without being in that situation? Like, how can you protect? I know there's so many options about protection for identity theft, but identity theft, I think, is one thing. AI theft in your identity, I think, will be a completely different one that I don't think nobody knows. And what are your thoughts? Do you think we're going to have regulations about that in the future?
As a country, we're actually kind of behind on that. Like, I know Canada has done a lot of stuff with what they want to do with AI regulation. I think probably the nature of being in the United States, it's much more capitalistic than other countries. And so that is winning out over look how long it took us to get privacy laws together. And it's just now starting to really take root in all of the states. I do think we're going to have to regulate it, because there are a lot of things that scare me. Like, when I see some of the videos, I'm like, whoa, that's really realistic, and it didn't take much to get there. Mm-hmm.
you know, for kids? How can teach, you know, my teenagers are like, the other day they thought a video was completely real, and I'm like, no, that's generated by AI. No, mom, you don't know. And like, how, you know, how can we protect us?
So you guys will notice a lot of the advice I give has nothing to do with technology. It has to do with, like, my way of helping my kids with them is pretty much forcing them to learn how to do critical thinking. Like, and I always tell them, if you can't think, I was like, is it 10 minutes or are you giving your hand?
She's raising her.
So my kids might come to me and say, this X is proven. And I was like, proven by who? And I force them to show me the proof. Because so many things that, especially if you're online, it is so easy for someone to present a convincing argument that is based in nothing but opinion. And when I was teaching at U of H, I would always tell the kids, your opinion only matters until you use it as a proof for something that's supposed to be factual. At that point, your opinion does not matter. It was what you can prove matters. And so I think teaching people to be more critical about, like, if you see a picture of a political candidate sitting in a church praying and it has 14 fingers, it's not real. Right? It's not real. Huh? So to extend on that, like, if you teach, and this is probably good for all of us, learn sort of the common biases and heuristics that people use. Like, confirmation bias is a big one, right? Like, we all know what that is. There's like 27 of them that I see all the time that people will use, and I'm like, no, that's not a good argument, because here's why. You know, and if you can teach your kids how to see that, not necessarily to prove other people wrong, but so they process. To kind of wrap this up, critical thinking, media literacy is a big thing that we don't have, and sort of a technical literacy, so they know what tools are out there that could be used to fool them. Sorry.
All right, we have time for 2 more short questions, and then we've got to wrap it up. I'm glad I gave plenty of time for questions because I knew you guys would want to talk to Kelsey.
Could you please repeat what you said to your students at U of H about opinions?
Your opinion only matters if it's just an opinion. Like, it'd be crazy for me to tell someone you can't believe Michael Jordan is better than Kobe Bryant, right? Right, that's their opinion. But when you try to say it is a proven fact, then you got to be able to. So your opinion only matters if you're using it as an opinion. Otherwise, your opinion is just that.
What did you say about the proven fact? So the opinion and the proven fact.
If you're trying to use your opinion in a situation where it's factual, then you got to be able to prove it. You need evidence.
Hi, Kelsey. Thank you for being here this morning. I have a question in regard to the field I'm in, production for film and TV. If you're writing a script, what are some of the things that we need to keep in mind if we're worried about, you know, our idea being stolen?
I have so much, because my daughter's in music and we talk about this all the time. I think in general, there's probably not a lot of new ideas out there. I think it's the twist on your idea. Like, think about the hero's journey. You have Star Wars, you have Hunger Games, you have Harry Potter. Like, it's all the same story, right? It's what's the twist? And I think it's the twist that I probably would be more concerned with putting in the AI than anything else. But the structure of, you have this hero, they have a mentor, they cross the threshold, you know, they go on the adventure, like all of that. We've been using that same story structure for thousands of years. And so I would be concerned about putting my whole script into an AI, because we don't really know whether or not ChatGPT or Gemini are taking all of this stuff and using it to continue to train the model or not. They say that they're not, but we don't know for sure.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Kelsey. We're hopefully you have time to hang around because I'm sure a couple other people have.
To add on to that, one thing that me and my daughter did a couple of days ago, I took a clip, like a 45-second clip of her music and put it in Suno. And it created a complete remix, like a whole 3-minute song. It added another singer, it harmonized. And I was like, she was even fooled. She's like, when you played that, I thought someone stole my music because it replicated her voice so well. And so especially with things like that, the tools are getting so much better. It actually was a good song, but,
on that note,
it did scare her.
Let's thank Kelsey for being here today. I hope you guys got a lot out of it, and hopefully we'll see you back here next month.
I took Kelsey's notes, which he kindly sent to us yesterday night, and I uploaded them on the website. So if you go to smbhou.com, you can download them from there. He's done an amazing job on that. I'm sure I helped him a little, maybe not. He did that himself. Anyway, it had links and all kinds of cool stuff. So definitely go. Okay, if they don't work. Internal, yeah. But if there's something else that we're going to get from you, I will put it there. Okay, so keep looking there. I may replace it with something later, but for now, you'll be able to see what his notes were for today. And thank you. And also, we'll be here next month. So are you going to talk about what's coming up next?
I think we're probably wrapping up the live. But if you'd like to talk about what's coming next month, you can.
Yeah, we'll do it real quick. So we'll wrap up the live. But before we go, next month, we will be back here. We will be talking about short form video. And Brittany Crossan will be here. And that's also, we can use AI for that too. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. And the month after that, we're going to do a workshop on AI short form video. And I think, depending on what we do, we may spread out throughout this building to do that one, but we'll talk about that as we go. Just keep on top of what we're doing. Thank you for being flexible today. We do have stickers for those who brought stickers, parking passes in. If you scanned your way in, fantastic. All you have to do is scan your way back out. We sent out a QR code last night. Those are the things. Okay. And so all of you watching online, we love you. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll talk to you soon. All right, guys. Oh, and if you want to hear 11 Labs, I have duplicated my voice. See if it sounds like me. Oh, I got to turn up the volume. That would help.
Who knows how to use AI might.
Let's do it again.
It's not AI that is going to take your job, but someone who knows how to use AI might.
That's pretty good.
Wow. That's pretty good.
That's me. That's my doppelganger at 11 Labs. Anyway, so